Hello everyone, welcome to the Optimum Health Institute, San Diego. I'm Dr. Andy Tutino, and I'm going to be teaching the digestion class today. Now, before I begin with digestion class, I want you to understand there's a lot to cover today. Many of us do think of digestion with our mouths, our stomachs, our intestines. I'm here to tell you that there's very much more involved. The nervous system is very much involved. Our lymphatic system is very much involved. Our liver is very much involved. Our pancreas is very much involved. And we're going to be touching on all of these systems today to discuss how they come together and how they work in the digestive tract. Okay? So I'd like to begin by giving an overview. We're going to be discussing the brain, as I mentioned, our mouths, our esophagus, our stomachs, our liver, our pancreas, our large intestine, our small intestine, and out the door in the rectum. Okay? As I mentioned, digestion does begin in the brain. There is a cephalic portion to digestion. And what I want to say about this is when you're thinking about your wheatgrass juice and your mouth starts to salivate and you're all excited about drinking that wheatgrass juice, that is a cephalic portion to digestion. It's very important you understand this concept. Normally, we will produce 10 milliliters of hydrochloric acid under the cephalic portion to digestion. However, people with chronic levels of stress can produce up to 50 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. And that's how they make the association of high levels of stress giving people with gastric ulcers. So cephalic portion to digestion is very, very important. I'm going to show you a diagram that tells you where this happens. This happens in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is known for the hunger sensation. It's also known for body temperature regulation and the seat of emotions. I like to use the example as when you're eating a good meal, you're feeling pretty good, and the hypothalamus is still responsible for that. Okay, moving right along, your mouth and your teeth. I don't know how to tell you this, but your teeth are very, very, very important to you. You must floss and brush your teeth every day. In digestion, we have mechanical breakdown. We must chew our food 20 to 30 times. Very important you understand this. And I like to use the point, case in point. Let's say we're in a third world country. We've seen the pictures in National Geographic. They're 35, 45. They're smiling, but their teeth don't look so well, do they? They don't have the opportunities that we do through the dental and things that happen in America. Why this is important. These people could be eating 3 square meals a day. But what would happen if they cannot mechanically break down their food properly? They end up having a malabsorption problem. If they do this for 10 years, do you see how they can become sick? How they can literally be starving. They're eating well, but they're starving because you do not have proper mechanical breakdown. Very, very important you understand this concept. Okay? Now, I'm showing you a picture here of a person we cut in half, I like to say. There's a picture of the tongue. And underneath the tongue, there is the salivary glands, which is just underneath it. It's called the sublingual gland. There's also the submandibular gland. Like I mentioned earlier, their job is to produce salivary juices. Very difficult to eat with a dry mouth. There's also another gland called the parotid gland. Its job is to squirt out an enzyme called ptyalin. Now, ptyalin breaks down starch in our mouths. Very important you understand this concept. If you went clunk, clunk, swallow, how much ptyalin did you mix in? Hardly any. Did you help yourself? No. Very important you understand this. The body's designed for it to be calm, mechanically break down your food, and enzymatic reaction to break down enzymes, or break down starch, I should say, in our mouths. Very important you understand that concept. But also this picture shows you another thing. In the back of our throats, we have what? Most of us still have them. They're called tonsils. Are they not? I like to say in 1960 you didn't need them, in 1990 you do. That's how science catches up, you see. Most of the time today you do keep your body parts as long as you can, and of course, again, with your tonsils, very, very important. Let's talk about this concept. Why would Mother Nature put these tonsils here? Because our food could be dirty, our utensils could be dirty, the air we breathe obviously is dirty at times, the body needs to protect itself, correct? That's what the tonsils are for. And that's how it plays a role in the digestive tract. Later on, when I get through this, there's going to be other areas where the lymphatic system plays a major role in digestion. And that's one of the areas it starts out at. I'm showing you a picture now of swallowing. Very, very important when we swallow, not to be speaking at the same time. we have a flap called the epiglottis. The epiglottis's job is to flip back and forth, closing off the trachea, which is our air tube when we swallow, and of course our esophagus, it'll close it off when we're speaking. What's my point? The point is this: if you're talking and eating at the same time, your epiglottis is going taka 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 in your throat, and you can choke. A lot of us laugh about this at times, how it can be funny how this can occur. But how many people die every year choking? This could be a serious thing. So my point is this: we must be calm when we eat our meals, and you need to be quiet when you eat your meals, because the body's designed to do it that way. All right? Okay, moving right along. We're going to be speaking about the esophagus itself. Very, very important. Mother Nature does some interesting things here. The esophagus is from here to here. It's made up of different types of muscle. The first third is considered striated muscle, or I should say voluntary muscle. What that means is this is all striated muscle. We can control how we can move it all. The next 2/3 is smooth muscle, or involuntary muscle. You cannot control smooth muscle. Our organs are all surrounded with smooth muscle. You can't say liver move and it just will. It won't happen that way. Subconscious mind dictates how smooth muscle works. Let's discuss why the body decided to do it that way. Have you ever considered in a baby who's breastfeeding, they're upside down, but yet they don't choke when they're drinking the milk. They're drinking a baby bottle, they're upside down, but yet they're not choking. Why? They can control the first third of that muscle. Most of us have lost that ability because we sit at the table like good human beings, and gravity works for us. Very important. But if any of you have had the urge to drink upside down again, you'll choke a few times, but it'll come back to you. All right? So that's why I did that. Smooth muscle. Okay. Smooth muscle is slower acting, but longer lasting, and it's stronger. That's very important to understand that. Now, why did it do that? Put that in the next 2/3. Have you ever noticed when you eat your meal, right, and you cough, you don't cough up your food, now do you? If you were to sneeze, your food doesn't come right back up, now does it? That muscle can stay up to contracted up to 6 hours after a meal. That's why that's considered a smooth muscle, and that's why the body put it there. Very important you understand that. Now we're going to be moving right along, and I want to discuss with you peristalsis. At the Institute, we speak about peristaltic movements a lot. It's very important you understand that. Peristaltic movements is the movement of food through the gastrointestinal tract. They do say that you have 3 major peristaltic movements a day. I'd like to say that you would have at least 5 peristaltic movements a day, and they're in association with your meals. So 3 major meals a day, 3 peristaltic movements a day. 5 major meals a day, you would have 5 peristaltic movements a day, because that's how the body moves. That's how the food moves through. However, I'm here to tell you that it's different how the food moves through the body. It moves differently through the esophagus than it does in the small intestine and large intestine, and we're going to get into that. However, I did mention to you that the esophagus is a muscle, and I want you to think of muscle having tone, obviously. And as the food goes through the esophagus, it comes straight through. Just straight through. It propagates straight through right into the stomach. People have asked, what about heartburn? What's that about? The question is this: when you're getting heartburn, you're burning the inside of your esophagus. Your esophagus is not designed to have high levels of acid coming from the stomach, and that's what's burning. Chronic heartburn can cause a problem in that it can put a hole in the esophagus. You can get esophageal ulcers, just like you can get gastric ulcers or any type of other ulcer. Very important you understand that. Now, at the Institute, they've talked about that the raw food diet does help with this situation. Okay? You need to understand that. All right. Moving right along. Your stomachs. I want you to think of your stomachs as a blender. It's a mixing blender. Little digestion, or I should say little absorption, occurs in the stomach. What happens in the stomachs, we break things down. We break down our complex proteins, fats, carbohydrates, starches. They get broken down. That's what happens in the stomach. The stomach's job is not to feed the body, but it's to break things down. What does cross the stomach wall quite easily is water, aspirin, and alcohol. This is the problem with those 2 things. But other than that, not much will cross the stomach wall. It's not designed for that. One thing I want you to understand is that the stomach wall has a layer of mucus lining by 1 millimeter thick. So 1 millimeter thick layer of mucus lining to protect it against the high levels of acid. I'm going to show you a picture depicting the anatomy of the stomach. At the top of it, you have the cardiac sphincter. The cardiac sphincter, why would they call it the cardiac sphincter? Because of its location. The stomach's location is here. It's not down here, but it's here. And that valve goes up beneath the heart. And that's why they call it the cardiac sphincter. Now, the analogy I want to use to you is this. You know how they say that a heart attack can mimic indigestion? And indigestion can mimic a heart attack. Based on the location of that valve, that's why that would happen. See? That's to let you know how they came up with the name cardiac sphincter. Now what I'm going to be showing you is the body, which is also known as the fundus of the stomach. And then we're going to be going into what we call the pylorus area and the pyloric valve going into the small intestine. One of the things we need to talk about is what actually happens in the stomach. You have a hydrochloric acid buildup. There are cells in the stomach that produce this. They're called oxenic cells. Oxenic cells produce hydrochloric acid and a thing called intrinsic factor, which we'll speak about. You also have these cells called parietal cells. These cells produce pepsinogen, which gets converted to pepsin, which helps break down protein. I will review this in a second, but I do want to speak to you about this right at the beginning. Now, let's talk about this hydrochloric acid business. We need to speak about pH at this time. The pH levels of the body go from 0 to 14. I want you to think about 14 being the basic side baking soda. 0, obviously 0.1 or 0.8 being very, very acidic. Our stomach hydrochloric acid level is so acidic, it can burn a hole in this carpet. It can burn a hole in a penny. The pH of the stomach is 0.8. Very important you understand that. 7.0 is considered neutral. That's what water would be like. Our blood is at 7.4, and that's considered slightly alkaline. Our colon will go to 8.0 on the basic side, and we'll speak about that later on. And of course, 14 being very basic, something like baking soda. Very important you understand this concept. Our body requires acid. It needs acid to break things down. Our body does not like acid when it comes to absorption. And we're going to speak about how that works. Very important you understand that. Now, I mentioned a thing called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor's job is to go out and find vitamin B12. And it finds it in the small intestine. And it binds to it. We call it lock and key. Once it's got it, it's got it. It does not let go. And it gets absorbed back into the liver. Why is vitamin B12 important? Vitamin B12 is very important for the maturation of red blood cells. In other words, without B12, our red blood cells do not live their full life cycle. They break down early. Now, you need about 4 milligrams of B12 a day to sustain. Your liver is going to store 4,000 to 5,000 milligrams of B12. Now, I'll give you case in point. Let's say Mrs. Jones walked into our office and we did some lab work with her. And she came back and I said, Mrs. Jones, we have a little bit of a problem. You have a thing called pernicious anemia. And she would say, what is that? And I would say, it's a deficiency of vitamin B12. And, you know, something's going on with that. Your blood cells are breaking down too early, and it's a deficiency of B12. And she would say something like, oh, you mean I just need to take vitamin B12 capsules or injections or something like that? And I would say, for the short term, yes. But I need to ask you a different question. The question is this. What changed in your life 4 to 5 years ago? And she'd say, what do you mean? It takes 4 to 5 years for you to deplete all of the B12 out of your liver. And that brings me to the point of health care. Health care is not today because you're at the institute. It's not this week. It's not next week. It's not even the week after. It's a lifetime event. What you decide to put down your throats is your business, but you're also accountable for what you do. Now, I want to get off on a little bit of a health analogy here because it's very important I think you understand that. The human body is the most sophisticated thing known to man. You would not even compare the space shuttle with the human body. No scientist would do that. Now, I'm going to prove that to you with just a couple of quick analogies. If we had a Ferrari on this side, and then we had a Volkswagen on this side, most all of us would agree that the Ferrari is a much nicer machine. A little more expensive, but a much nicer machine. However, if we poured water down its gas tank for it to run on, and we gave that Volkswagen super unleaded gasoline, which one would run better? Obviously, the Volkswagen. You're born with the Ferrari. We've got it. Now, what do you want to put down its throat for gasoline is your business. That's how your body's going to run. It's very important you understand that concept. And I'm going to take it a step further. I did say that the nervous system controls and coordinates every single function of the body. Very important you understand this. And then a few months ago, Kasparov, the world chess champion, was taken on by the supercomputer by IBM. This is what fascinates me about the human body. That machine was designed to make over 100 million moves a second in the game of chess. Now, the human body, the human brain, beats the game, beats the machine at 100 million moves a second in the game of chess, and runs a human body with 75 trillion cells in it at the same time, in this much space. Very phenomenal. And I'm also going to take it just one more step forward, and we're going to go on. If you don't believe that the body is a self-healing organism, you're at the wrong place. This place tells you this, that the body is a self-healing organism given the right circumstance. Okay? All right. Moving right along. I needed to tell you that. The duodenum. I'm going to show you a picture of the pancreas, I should say. The pancreas is very important to digestion. A lot of us think of our pancreas for what? Diabetes, insulin, and so forth. However, the pancreas is very much involved in digestion. On the anatomy of it, you can see that you have the tail, you have the body, and you have the head. I want you to understand on the diagram how closely related it is to the small intestine. It's not far away, they're neighbors, and for very good reason why. The pancreas is considered an endocrine organ and an exocrine organ. Let me go over this with you. Endocrine means it will secrete an enzyme, or I should say a hormone, like insulin, directly into the bloodstream. That would be considered endocrine. Exocrine means it'll secrete enzymes, like the digestive enzymes, out of the bloodstream into the small intestine. This is very rarely found in the body. Remember when I talked about the salivary glands? They do what? They just secrete out. They don't do both. The parotid gland that secretes the enzyme called ptyalin for starch breakdown, it does what? Only out, where the pancreas does both. Endocrine, insulin directly into the blood. Exocrine, enzymes directly out of the bloodstream into the small intestine. The enzymes with respect to digestion that they secrete are these: chymotrypsin and trypsin for the breakdown of protein, amylase for the breakdown of starch. Who else breaks down starch? Ptyalin in our mouths. It also secretes lipase for the breakdown of fat, and a sodium bicarbonate ion to come and attach to the hydrogen ions that are coming through with the hydrochloric acid. Moving right along. I'm going to be speaking about your liver and your gallbladder. I'm showing you a picture at this point of the liver. Before I talk about that, I want you to understand one thing. Next to your brain and your heart, your liver is it. Your liver is it. It performs over 700 functions for the human body. Okay? With respect to digestion, it produces bile. It also produces a thing called cholesterol, and we're going to speak about that. It is the major detoxifier of the human body, and it is a regenerating organ. Now, here's the anatomy. You have the right lobe, and you have the left lobe. The one thing I want you to understand is this, that the liver is very resilient. In other words, we can destroy up to 75% of our liver and not skip a beat. And then people say, wow, that's pretty phenomenal. I like to say to our detriment. And you say, how come? Because that means you could have come out and abused your body, had, let's say, 3-4 beers, whatever you want to do, and think that I'm still alive, I'm well tomorrow morning, but yet you put damage to your liver and you think your liver did fine. Well, here's why I say to my detriment. If someone's pinching my skin, I don't wait till he rips off 75% of it before I say, stop that, don't do I? But see, that's what people do, and that's what happens with our liver because it's so resilient. See that? Very important you understand that concept. I also said that the liver produces cholesterol. Yes, it does. You've never heard about that. Cholesterol is essential for life. If we don't have cholesterol, we're dead. It's that simple. That's why your body makes it. You see, the cholesterol holds every 75 trillion cells in our body together. It's gooey in material.